Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Dave.
We are here to do our hot take review. It is 8:15 in the morning on a Sunday morning in Melbourne and Sydney. We have just watched Wild Blue Yonder, and we're here to do our Doctor Who show hot take review. You ready for this one, Rob?
I am ready for this, Dave. Yes, I might be a bit croaky, but I am ready.
Can I just say before we dive in, I've now listened to quite a few hot take reviews of the Star Beast and was very impressed by them. I think there was some really healthy discussion, debate about some of the issues in that, and it didn't sort of dive into it didn't go into either extremes at either end, so it was really, really positive. Let's see if we can keep that going. Rob, before we go into spoiler territory, opening statement from you.
Opening statement from me, Dave. I can't lie and say, oh yes, this is the episode I envisaged, in terms of the actual plot, because I'm not clairvoyant, but I can say, oh yes, this is the episode I envisaged in terms of we're on a spaceship and weird stuff happens. That's what I was anticipating in this episode, and that's what happened. Ta-da!
I will claim a small amount of clairvoyancy, because last night I put out a bit of a tweet with some sort of, tongue-in-cheek things about what could be in this episode. But the one that I did predict was that it was going to be a darker style RTD, and I used the words in the style of Midnight.
Right.
And I reckon that wasn't pretty far off.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a sort of a two-hander here, or maybe you could call it a four-hander if you double them up. Is that spoilers? I don't know. But yeah, Midnight has a slightly bigger cast, but not much bigger, so there are similar vibes.
Yeah, and I think that... Is it a base under siege if the phone call's coming from inside?
Yeah.
A base being sieged from the inside? I think, whatever you call that genre, I think that there are parallels. Rob, did you enjoy Wild Blue Yonder?
I did, Dave. I did.
So did I. So, let's keep going. Before we do spoilers, Rob, your word of the week.
I had a lot of fun with this one, Dave, because my word of the week is weak.
Is that spelt with an A or an E?
I knew you'd ask that. It is with an E. Double E, in fact.
That's good. Well, I have to write it down, so I want to make sure I've got it correct. My word of the week is problem.
Okay.
Right, well, the spoiler curtain is now down. Rob, what would you like to talk about first?
Dave, I think we've got to kick off with Isaac Newton. We have an opening sequence here, which is a bit of comedy, and it's nicely played as a little skit. This could have almost been the Children in Need skit. It's in that sort of vein.
Yes.
I guess we can't go past commenting, though, that they race-swapped Isaac Newton. And I don't know if it's one of those things where RTD is just trying to troll parts of the audience. I know this fella was in It's a Sin. Maybe they're just mates and Russell likes using him. Or was it an actual diversity and inclusion thing? Because that's becoming more of a thing in entertainment. I mean, you look at the Academy Awards now, they've got representation and inclusion standards. I don't know the answer to this. Could it be all three things? I don't want to labour the point because it's just a tiny, funny skit at the start, like I said. But it's there on screen to be commented on, so comment made.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised when we opened in... 17th century apple orchard because of what we were expecting. I thought, maybe he's completely pulled the rug out from under us with what we expected. And I thought, okay, well, and obviously it turned out to just be a little skit. Look, I also sort of had the moment of, he's cast a different raced actor for the part of ours. I thought, look, for something like this, I think it's pretty harmless. I still quite like the idea of watching those old BBC dramas where you look at a character on screen, then you go and look at the portrait of them from 100 years ago and go, wow, they really made that person look like that person.
Or like when you watch Gettysburg, the movie Gettysburg, and at the end it shows the actor and the real person. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I always really like that. That's kind of my preferred style. But I don't mind, for example, Mary Queen of Scots, they had a slightly more diverse court in Edinburgh than perhaps really would have been the case. I don't care about that, and I don't really care about this. As you say, it was a bit of a sketch. So look, but those thoughts did go through my mind as I saw it, along with the fact that this didn't have the Fourth Doctor going up a tree and explaining gravity to Newton after lunch. So I'm sure there are a lot of fans who are also going to be like, no, that's not how it happened. And again, look, I won't lie, I did think that.
When things like that happen, I just think it adds to this idea that the Doctor is a bit of a bullshitter, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so look, the sketch happened. I don't know if I've missed the relevance of it to the episode. They must have spent a bit of money going out and doing some location filming. Was that just hey kids, we've got so much money we can spend it on just stuff that we don't even have to spend it on now? Or was it done just to do the Gravity Mavity joke for the rest of the story? Is that going to carry on for the next 20 years? I don't know.
As a catchphrase, I don't think it's a particularly good one, you know.
No.
People are going to be going around saying Mavity all the time now.
Yeah, no, so look, it was weird, it was fun, it was what it was.
Yeah. Alrighty. Also going into the episode, Dave, there was a lot of speculation. There was speculation that John Sim was going to be playing the Master in this because I think it even popped up in an IMDb entry. And people were like, oh my God, the big secret is John Sim's in this. There was also a strong rumour that Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi were going to be in this, playing, quotation marks, evil versions of themselves. And I thought, that's interesting. That's even plausible. We have a multi-Doctor adventure that's not really the Doctor's. I could even see how that would bring someone like Capaldi back, who's always reticent about returning to the role. He could come back because he's not actually playing the role. I can even see how it would fit into the episode. These creatures could morph into those Doctors. But of course, that didn't happen.
No, and now that we're writing that episode, you could even have a sort of a 20-second thing of, I'm now Peter Davison. Oh, I've got this wrong. I'm now older than I should be, or something. You can totally say, but that didn't happen. Look, no, there were wild rumours out there about what was going to happen. I'm going to be interested to see. I suspect not so much on the podcast reviews, but in the Twitter reactions, if there are people who are like, well, it was good, but it wasn't as good as the one I imagined.
Yeah.
I had multiple Doctors and companions from the past fighting Daleks and Cybermen and, the Wirren or something,
Yeah.
So it didn't happen. Let's talk big picture. Let's talk about this episode.
Sure.
This was intense. I did look at the timer a couple of times, but it wasn't in a sense of, okay, I get it, how much longer of this is there to go? It was sort of like, how much longer do I have to sort of stay here with my heart racing? How much longer before I get out of this one? Because I did find I was sitting, a little bit forward in the seat and the heart was just a little bit excited. And I felt pretty much from the moment the TARDIS disappeared a proper degree of tension.
Yes, and the TARDIS disappearing also took the sonic screwdriver with it. And last hot take, in fact, I made the comment we should be getting away from relying on the sonic screwdriver, not just because it was radically overpowered in that previous special, but just in general. All through New Who, it's been a magic wand that gets leaned on far too often. I don't like it. It's a tool that's become incredibly fetishized by swathes of fandom. And I love the fact it was jettisoned here along with the TARDIS. And you're right, all of that just ratcheted up the tension. They're on this weird spaceship. All hope of escaping is gone. Or at least we think it's gone. It's the HADS that's probably kicked into action. I thought that was a nice touch. It was tense.
And what I'm just sort of realising as well is that the Star Beast, as we said, was a very entertaining but very light and sort of fun episode. And so we started with a skit that was very much of that tone. We then got the whole little bit about the TARDIS kicking them out and the flames and the sonic screwdriver and all the rest of it. And I wonder if that was partly all just to prevent whiplash in the audience, because you're sort of going, rather than just jumping from fun and entertainment to, oh my God, this is tense, in seconds, we did sort of have that, oh, look, it's fun and entertaining, and oh, here's a few gags with the TARDIS, and it's now getting a bit serious. Oh, it's serious now. I wonder if that was a deliberate sort of just easing the casual audience in.
Yeah, I think so, especially people who might be starting with this episode, perhaps.
Yeah, visually, the spaceship was remarkable, spectacular. I don't know how much of that was a set, whether that was a location. I'm sure we'll learn that as we go on. But it looked fantastic. Not quite convinced by the Marvin the Android robot, but it did what it had to do.
I thought he'd escaped from the Smile episode. I thought it was an emoji bot with a different head.
Yeah, that was a bit of that as well. Yeah, no, I was thinking more movie Hitchhikers, Marvin.
Yeah. Talking of the plot, Dave, though, broadly, I really like this because sometimes we get villains who aren't well defined, and that works great. I think Eternals are kind of like that. We know a bit about Eternals, but we don't know a lot about Eternals. And here, it's just, what are these things on the edge of the universe? Not knowing quite what they are is part of the whole vibe, and I really liked that. I mean, it would get old fast if every week we didn't know much about our villains, and it was always, he's just some guy. Yeah, that's just something, because it is shorthand to not having to do a lot of work. But there are times like this where it just really adds to the mystery, and it's great. I think it unraveled well, and we learned their sort of capabilities in real time with the Doctor and Donna. That was cool.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And in fact, last week I listened to the Flight Through Entirety episode about Face the Raven, and they make the point there that one of the things where that episode succeeds is that nobody sits down and talks about the Raven as, this is actually an entity from the planet Qantas, and this is what it does. and I think that this is the same example here. I think if there had been a moment of, I've heard of you, you're from Time Lord mythology, and you come from the dimension, like that would have detracted from it, and the fact that we don't know what these things are is interesting and different and does make things more tense. And at one point, probably about 40 minutes into the episode, I did write down here, what is the threat? Not because I was sitting there going, for God's sake, what's the threat here? Like, who cares? Mm-hmm. I was feeling threatened, but I didn't know quite what the threat was. And I still don't quite know what the threat was. Is the threat that they were going to be eaten? Is the threat that they were going to be abandoned? Is the threat or some combination? And there was this sort of brief moment of, if they get access to transport, they can go and be wicked across the universe or something. I didn't really get that. And I didn't really care that much, but I did sit there for a couple of moments and sort of go, I'm not quite sure why I'm scared of these things.
Okay, well, let's try and unravel it in real time. I'll try and unravel it in my head here. The captain of the ship knew they were becoming like her, and therefore if they knew what she knew, they could take over the ship. So she killed herself, which cut off the link to her brain. There it is. I guess because the Doctor and Donna started reconfiguring the ship and showing they knew how to use the ship and knew how to bring it back online, these creatures appear and think, these people are worth copying, we'll know what they know, and then we'll know how to reboot the ship and go back to our original plan. So I don't know what the end game is, whether they would actually kill the Doctor and Donna after a while, or whether just becoming them was enough to take over the ship, or whether they would kill them so that they couldn't be stopped from taking over the ship. But again, I'm just working through this in real time.
Yeah, no. So the Doctor does say implicitly at one point that they reach a point where they are a 100% copy.
Right.
And that means they no longer... I think that means they no longer need the originals.
There you go.
And the pilot killed itself before that point was reached, which is why they reverted.
Yeah, but it doesn't really take away from the story. You still feel the threat.
Absolutely.
Whatever the threat is.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I very rarely do this.
Okay.
But I'm about to praise Murray Gold.
For being understated?
For being understated.
Bingo, yep.
I particularly in that, and look, he ramped it up a bit towards the end because he can't help himself, but I was listening to his score through this and going, this is really good. I kind of wondered if he'd listened to some of the Chibnall era and Siegel Akinola. I wonder if he'd maybe listened to him during the Chibnall era and go, ooh, this understated thing works. I should do this now and then. Because I thought this is really good. I was very impressed, and as you know, what I could jokingly call myself a Murray Gold hater.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really impressive. So big ticks for me there.
Yeah, well, even going back to the first special, when I watched it a second time with my wife, there were several scenes where she said, the music is not fitting this action at all. She was really down on him in that episode. I'll be curious to see what she says about this one when we watch it again.
Yes. Not the final sequence, the penultimate sequence when the Doctor takes the wrong Donna on board.
Oh, yeah. That was very tense.
It was very tense. Did it happen for any reason other than just, I want to do this scene?
Oh, yeah, I think so. You know, at one point I was thinking, okay, he's clearly taken the wrong one. Are they going to blow up Donna? And there has to be some kind of crisis averted there, and that becomes a thing, maybe even leading into the next episode. We're at the edge of the universe or the start of creation, or however they were describing it. Can something slightly magical or different to the ordinary happen out there, and we could actually kill someone and bring them back? I was wondering if they'd actually go there.
Yeah, or I thought maybe even if he goes back to save Donna, the bad Donna, the alien Donna, whatever you want to call it, isn't removed from the TARDIS and quickly turns into a blob of goo and floats into a ducting vent or something, and oh my god, we've got this thing wandering around the TARDIS now. I thought that could happen. As it turned out, had that scene not happened, I don't think anything in the plot would have changed whatsoever. But it did give us the moment where I think Donna genuinely faced that, like, I'm dying in the moment, and that was a really good piece of acting from Catherine Tate.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, however, I think that David Tennant gets the chocolates for subtle acting. I think the way that Tennant is able to delineate very, very subtly between Doctor and alien Doctor, I think was extraordinary. And Catherine Tate did very well with a number of scenes here. And again, I say that as someone who's not a huge Catherine Tate fan. She did very well. I don't think she was able to quite do that tiniest bit of subtlety to let us know that it's not the real Donna in the way that Tennant could. And that's the difference between a very good actor and, in Tennant's case, an exceptionally good actor.
Yeah, it's something in the eyes, because he wouldn't even be talking sometimes. It's just the way he was looking, and you're like, I know that look. That's bad,
Yeah, exactly.
I got a couple more points up my sleeve before we get to Word of the Week and all that malarkey, Dave. I need to bring it up. The Doctor's gay now. It was a throwaway line about Isaac Newton being hot, but I think it's worth noting. I've seen people speculate that Ncuti's Doctor will be played gay. I did wonder if this cuts its grass a bit, or whether it's trying to be a bit of foreshadowing that it's possible, after a long time of the Doctors being mostly asexual, or, having something for the ladies, to suggest a gay Doctor. It could be like at the end of the Capaldi era, where they started making multiple references to men regenerating into women. They even showed that on screen as well, before it actually happened with Capaldi regenerating into Whittaker. I'm just wondering if this is a subtle bit of foreshadowing, if it is true that Ncuti's Doctor will be played that way.
Interesting. I heard the line as well and didn't take it nearly as much as you did, apparently.
Okay.
Because last week we had the moment where he says, "Oh, I loved her," or something, and I'd say things like that now. That sort of idea of the Doctor being a bit more open with his feelings and expressing them, and I just thought this was sort of another example of the 14th Doctor blurting out stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't necessarily take it as, I thought Isaac Newton was hot and I'd like to have sex with him.
Okay.
So much as Donna's like, he's hot, and the Doctor's like, yeah, I guess he was. In the way that we could have a conversation where I might say, yeah, Ncuti Gat was pretty hot. And if you say that to me, I'm like, oh, Rob's turned gay now. I'm just like, no, Rob has acknowledged that, yes, Ncuti Gatwa is a very good-looking man.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you can absolutely have a man crush as a straight man. Absolutely. It's just with the rumours of what the Ncuti Doctor might be, I just wondered if it was foreshadowing, just trying to just smooth the way in. I don't know.
No, look, absolutely. That's an example of a line that was thrown out there. And the other option is that RTD is just like, this means nothing, but oh my god, it's going to cause some controversy.
Exactly.
That'd be marvellous, yes. Yes, I noticed the line. I didn't take it quite to the places you did, but what you said is not incredible, not unrealistic.
No. Also, I wanted to bring up Flux and the Timeless Child, because far from retconning the Chibnall era, which a bunch of fandom were convinced RTD was going to do. You know, basically, RTD, he knows Doctor Who, he's not going to let this nonsense stand. RTD's basically leaned into it. Yes, half the universe is gone. And considering we lost a bunch of the universe in Legopolis, how small is the universe now? Anyway, and yes, the timeless child thing is a thing. Absolutely it is.
Look, I noted that as well, and I also noted that, because we spoke regularly about, hang on, did they destroy half the universe and no one noticed?
Yeah.
And nobody cared?
Yeah.
And so I thought, they've written that for us, Rob. But I did also note, and again, I'm not a Chibnall hater, but I have to say this, RTD, in a couple of throwaway lines not remotely related to Flux, made me care about half the universe being destroyed far more effectively than Chibnall did across episodes of Flux. So, I think absolutely did Russell say, no, Flux happened, it's a thing, but also has confirmed in a way that Chibnall didn't, that there were consequences to Flux that perhaps Flux didn't deliver, or didn't really say as clearly as it could have, and RTD landed that. And yeah, again, this is just why he's such a good runner.
Yeah, well, the Doctor actually acknowledged it and acknowledged their part in it and felt bad for it, whereas Jodie's like, okay, fam, where are we off to next? It's like, really? Yes.
And look, final minor point from me. I'm not quite sure how anyone could think Wild Blue Yonder was anything other than a going to war song, unless there's a version out there that isn't the one I know, which is the anthem of the US Air Force, because it's pretty clear what they're doing about going down in flames and stuff. So
yeah,
and I don't know, that was a bit weird, but maybe it's just to show that Donna is a bit of a eclectic sort of personality.
Fair enough.
Are we good for words of the week now, Rob?
Yes, we are, Dave.
Well, look, I'll go first this week and say that my word of the week was problem, and this was because at the end of the episode, I thought that was an episode all about the Doctor and Donna having to solve a problem. I also looked down at a very, very empty page of what should have been notes and said, I have a problem.
Very good.
Fortunately, with your help, Rob, we've been able to sort of get to our limit, but I genuinely... So normally I end up with a good, full page of scrolled notes at the end of an episode watch. This time, half the page was empty because I was so engrossed in the episode, and because there weren't lots of little, this we're going here now, we're going here now. It was one continuous flowing story, and there were long bits of we're just exploring a corridor now. And that's really tense and really interesting, and it makes good viewing. It doesn't make for a good note. So I thought I had a problem, but we were fine. You said weak, double E, weak, Rob.
I did, Dave. Quite simply, this felt like a really solid but quirky episode of the week in a season of Doctor Who. And that's good, and it's bad. It's good because, it's really great to have a really solid but quirky episode of the week in Doctor Who. But it's bad because, a quick reminder, everybody, this is the 60th anniversary. We're 2 episodes into the capital letters 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, and we've had a paper-thin rehash of a 1980 comic that didn't have as much story as the 1980 comic, and we've had an episode that was very good and intriguing, but just felt like a really solid episode in a much longer season. No more, no less. So we're now going to turn to the final week, and it's the toy maker, and it's chaos, and I'm sure that will be quite something. But is this the 60th anniversary people imagined?
That's a really good point. Something that we've been saying on social media over the last week since our Hot Take review is, on one hand, we can assess... On one hand, we're able to assess the Star Beast as a standalone episode, but there is going to be a second way to assess it when we have seen all 3 of the specials, and see whether that was the first in a very diverse triptych of episodes, or whether everything's going to be like that, and was it a good opener, or all the rest of it. And I think the point you're making is a very, very good one, and one that we will come back to when we've got all 3 specials under our belt and we're doing our look back at this mini season.
Indeed, just planting the flag in the sand now.
Absolutely. And with that golf course-like flag planted in the sand, it's time to go to the sports desk.
4.
Rob, we're back at our sports desk where we talk about our play of the week, our fail of the week, and our player of the week. Before we give this a score, Rob, play of the week.
Dave, I'm going to go with the use of CGI in quirky ways, like giving the characters longer arms, or the scene where the imposter Doctor and Donna get squashed together and basically block the entire walkway. You know, while basic on some levels, the integration of the effects looked realistic and it was fun and it added to the weirdness of what was going on. So I've got to go with the CGI in this episode.
That's a really good call, because I said it, this looks epic, and it absolutely did. My play of the week is the scene where we first discover that there are duplicates. And we have the conversation between the Doctor and Donna in the yellow room, and that's all very nice. I'm going, okay, this is a nice little scene. Then there's a scene with the Doctor and Donna in the blue room, and I'm like, oh, have we just flashed forward?
Yeah.
Oh, yep. No, we're flashing. Oh,
what's happening?
Something's going on here, and now Donna's acting a bit weird and the Doctor's acting. And that just was a very, very, very wonderful way of letting the audience slowly work out that something's wrong and then slowly work out exactly what is wrong.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so well done.
Yeah, very good.
I'll keep us going with our foul of the week. And I've simply written down here on my notes the word teeth. I didn't think that we needed these things to suddenly get fangs to work out that they were the baddies or that they're a little bit monstrous. I think that the way that Tate and Tennant were playing this was so good, and the way the script was doing it was so good that sort of going down to, well, kind of, you know, we need a monster moment, so now they've got fangs. And some of that other sort of stuff they did just wasn't in line with everything else they were doing, and just wasn't necessary. But look, the fact that I'm reaching there for my foul of the week perhaps shows how well I thought this was made.
Well, coming a week after, how do we know the Meep's evil? Oh, it's got fangs now.
Yes.
Maybe it's a valid criticism.
What was your foul, Rob?
Dave, there's very little I can pick up on this week and be like, oh, come on. But if you pressed me, I'm going to go back to the word of the week and say we're halfway through, say it with me, the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, and it doesn't really feel like celebratory episodes. They just feel like decent episodes of the show. This one in particular felt very decent.
True. Very, very true. Which brings to your player of the week, Rob. Who was the most important part of the team this week?
The MVP, Dave. I'm going to go with Tom Kingsley, the director. I think if you're given a two-hander on a spaceship and it all looks a bit samey, you might go, ugh, I finally get to do Doctor Who, and there's not much to it. But Kingsley made this look interesting throughout. He worked the CGI content into the practical sets quite seamlessly. It looked good, and it could have been bad in the wrong hands. I mean, this could have been Terminus, Dave.
Yes, that's so true.
How about you?
Look, yes, there were moments where I almost was going to cheat here and just put down the team. But that would have been cheating. I did contemplate a number of people. There was that moment where I was almost going to give it to Catherine Tate. I thought that moment when she thought she was about to die was very, very good. But I have to give it to David Tennant. Mm-hmm. He is a remarkably good actor, and the level of subtlety to his performance was just absolutely gripping, absolutely amazing. I've said for many years now that a lot of Tennant's performances outside of Doctor Who, his dramatic performances, and particularly when he's playing wicked and evil, he's just extraordinarily good. And this gave us a bit of a taste of that. I'm also enjoying the way that the 14th Doctor is not the 10th Doctor. I was waiting for him to start, after the TARDIS left and then opened the door, I was waiting for, ooh, we're on a spaceship. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
In a field of greats, I thought David Tennant got the chocolates for me, which brings us to a score, Rob. Last week we gave the Star Beast a B and a 7. What are you giving it this week?
Oh, look, Dave, I think I've said it all about the episode, so I won't belabour it. For a score, I'm going with 8.5 out of 10.
Excellent. So definitely a step up from last week.
Absolutely.
I'm going for an A.
Yep.
It is very, very possible that this is an episode like Midnight, where the more I watch it, the more I appreciate what it does every time, and it works its way to an A+. The big question for me is, will this sort of stand up to multiple repeated viewings? When you know, for example, what's going on in that first scene where you see the duplicates, does it have the same level of tension? When you know which one is the real Doctor and which one's the real Donna, do those scenes have the same level of tension? They might, because Midnight still works, even when you know what's going to happen. This might too, and it could be that, as I say, after I come back in a few years, having watched this a few times, it gets to A+ territory, but it's at least an A.
Yeah, this is an episode I'm very happy to rewatch probably within the next 24 hours with my wife. Whereas the first episode, the first special, I was like, if I don't see this again, I don't care.
And that, to me, I think, is the big difference. The Star Beast, I enjoyed it. It was great. It filled out an hour of my life. I'm not going to go back to the Star Beast very often at all, if ever, just because there's so much happening in the world these days. Whereas this is one that I can see myself going, I want to go back and see how that works again. Yeah. I want to watch that one again. So, yeah, definitely a step up. We're doing very, very well. Once again, there was no next time trailer as part of Disney Plus's display, but I did go and find it on YouTube, and I think the next time trailer for next week tells us exactly what we're going to get. We're going to get the Doctor and the Toymaker doing Doctor and Toymaker stuff. And I don't think anybody's going to be shocked. It's going to be is it going to be a big RTD style season finale? Even though the season's been 3 episodes, we'll find out.
Yeah, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, but look, we'll be back to do that hot take next week. As we've discussed before, we will also come back at some point to do a look back at all 3 specials as a collection, and that's when we will include all of our listener feedback. As we've said before, we like to keep our hot takes to about half an hour, and to do that with listener feedback just isn't possible. So we will do listener feedback. We will do a look back to the whole thing, but this is just a hot take. It's been great. It's been fun. Rob, I'll leave you to go get this out. We'll be back in a week with The Giggle.
The Giggle. Yeah. See you then, Dave.
See you then, Rob. Bye.
Bye-bye.